Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Emilio Ramirez. Before you to present the proposed declaration of surplus of three city-owned properties at downtown Heritage Square. The Heritage Square is a redevelopment effort that relocated 15 historic homes from throughout the city to that square that is bounded by B Street on the west, 7th to the north, 8th Street to the east, and 8th to the south. And you can see the subject Heritage Square property on screen. The three properties that the city owns are also pictured on the screen, referred to as the Pump House, which is the visitor center at Heritage Square, and the chapel, which is a former chapel and used for events, and the winery, which is the bottom screen, and an empty building. In summary, the city owns the three structures at Heritage Square, and those three structures have suffered through a significant amount of deferred maintenance, and just they're in bad condition given the lack of maintenance that the city's undertook. So in order to sell or lease the city-owned properties, the city has to first go through a process to declare them surplus, meaning that we do not need them for agency use. Where the Surplus Land Act defines a surplus land as a formal process and a formal process for the notice of available surplus land and negotiate the steps. In this case, the subject properties include Heritage Square, located at 731 A Street, the Perkins Pump House, located at 715 South A Street, the Mulhart Stone House, located at 720 South B Street. All three of the properties are in need of improvements. Should also mention that the fact that the city owns properties at Heritage Square imposes an association fee of just under $12,000 per year, plus a DOYA property-based bid fee of over $2,000 per year. The city has entered into an agreement with the Heritage Square Property Owners Association for them to use the properties and allow for events to occur at the chapel. In return for which they incur the expenses of maintaining the properties and the fees as described above. And during the year 2023, Heritage Square had 117 events at the site, 52 public tours, served over 17,000 people, resulting in rental income to them of just over $40,000. They're created an estimated economic impact over $275,000. As mentioned, the properties are suffering from deferred maintenance of the properties, which the city was not able to continue to maintain after the dissolution of redevelopment. So they have aged and they need significant amount of repairs. The property owners board of directors has also started to fine the city because of the conditions that they're in, fining $100 per year. The board of directors has stated that the degree of disrepair is now very dangerous, flooding, stairs, railings, and falling apart, and pose a grave danger to anyone that might attempt to use them. In 2023, Public Works staff completed critical safety repairs, including installing new pump to address flooding near the winery, repairing railings on the stairs, installing a new HVAC system at the chapel, and repairing a fire link near the chapel. In addition to the repairs already completed in preparation for making the council request for American Rescue Plan Act funds, the city staff did thorough review of the city-owned buildings and identified over $800,000 of repairs that are needed, including replacing the roof of the chapel and the visitor center, replacing the glazed windows of the chapel, interior and exterior painting of all buildings, upgrading the ramp at the winery, upgrading the sinks at the chapel, building repairs to the chapel inside and out. And in March of 2022, the city council appropriated $1 million in ARPA funding for the repairs, but those repairs have not moved forward. So we're here for a proposed declaration of surplus. The Surplus Land Act defines the surplus land as a land owned in fee by the local agency for which the local agency's governing body takes a formal action in a regular public meeting declaring that the land is surplus and is not necessary for its agency use. The law requires that the land not necessary for agency use be declared a surplus prior to the disposition of the land. Agency's use is defined as land that is used or planned to be used for agency's work or operations, which expressly excludes commercial industrial uses such as non-governmental retail or entertainment or office. If an agency disposes of the land to finance such a project or activity, that disposition must go through the surplus land process defined by the Surplus Land Act. Staff proposes to declare surplus of 3 city-owned properties at Heritage Square. Upon the city's council's determination of the properties as surplus, staff would follow the procedures set forth in the government code. City must offer the surplus land to public entities and prospective housing sponsors and enter into good faith negotiations with interested parties that respond to the notice within the established time frame. If negotiations are successful, staff will return to City Council to request authorization to execute negotiated disposition agreements with the interested parties. The needed repairs can greatly affect those values of the structures, and staff recommends they sell the properties in the as-is condition. Should note that the downtown zoning of the sites are depicted by downtown general of the downtown specific plan. Downtown general is characterized by a mix of non-residential ground floor frontages with shop fronts and residential ground floors set back behind pedestrian-oriented frontages and access via doorways, stoops, and spacious lobbies. Eligible uses include residential, commercial gardens, farmers market, recreation, retail, office, and parking lots. City incurs an annual association fee of $11,677 for continued ownership, as well as a DOYA fee of $2,073 for those continued ownerships. We anticipate the repair cost could be as much as $1 million. There are no immediate financial impact for the recommended surplus action. We will need some minimal amount of cost to be incurred in the process of the Surplus Land Act. If council approves the surplus action, then the properties are sold and the net proceeds will be to the Ventura County Auditor Controller because of their connection to the successor agency. And so the relative taxing entities in the county would benefit, wherein the city is one of those taxing entities. The winery itself is not a successor agency property, therefore the entire proceeds of sale would go to the general fund. So the staff recommends that the city council adopt a resolution declaring the as surplus property and no longer needed for city use. The property known as the chapel at 731 South A, the property known as the visitor center at 715 South A, and the property known as the winery at 720 South B. Note that the finding of the adoption of the resolution does not constitute an approval of a project under CEQA. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.